Ladies and gentlemen, there will be one more 10-minute intermission between Act 2 and Act 3 this evening. And immediately following Act 3, we will begin a talk back with Kathy Renna. This is John Peacock, Matthew's academic advisor.
Well, the news reports started trickling out on Thursday, but no names were mentioned. The brutality of the crime was not mentioned. All that was mentioned was that there was a man, a Laramie man, found beaten out on the prairie, basically. Later in the evening, they mentioned his name. It was like, that's not the Matthew Shepard I know. That's not my student. That's not this person I've been meeting with.
I was in the coffee shop.
Romaine Patterson.
And someone pulled me aside and said, I don't know much, but they say that there's been a young man who's been beaten in Laramie. And they said his name was Matthew Shepard. And he said, do you think this could be our Matthew? And I said, well, yeah, it sounds like it could be our Matthew. So I called up my sister Trish and I said, tell me what you know. I'm just like, I need to know anything you know because I don't know anything.
So I'm talking to my sister on the phone, and that's when the whole story came up on Channel 5 News, and it was just like, ba-boom.
And the news reports kept rolling in. Young University of Wyoming student, his age, his description, it's like, oh my God.
And I felt sick to my stomach. Just instantly sick to my stomach. And I had to tell Romaine, yes, it was Matthew. It was your friend.
Well, I'll tell you it's overwhelming.
Matthew Galloway.
Friday morning I find out about it. I go to class, walk out, boom, there it is in the boomerang iron. So I immediately drive to the nearest newsstand, buy a branding iron, because I want more details. By that, go home before I can even open the paper. My boss calls me, he says...
Did you hear about what happened?
I'm like, yeah.
Was he in a bar Tuesday night?
I go, yes, he was.
You gotta get down to the bar right now. We gotta talk about this. We gotta discuss what's going on.
By this time, I was starting to get upset, but still, the severity wasn't out yet.
It was Thursday afternoon.
Rulon Stacy at Kudra Valley Hospital.
I got a call. We just got a kid in from Wyoming, and it looks like he may be the victim of a hate crime. And we have a couple of newspaper reporters here asking questions, and so we agreed that we needed one spokesperson. As CEO, I'll do that and try to gather as much information as I can.
And then I watched the 10 o'clock news that night, where they started speaking about the nature and the seriousness of it.
So I'm on the phone with Nicholson, and he's like...
We need to get to that arraignment so we can identify these guys and make sure these guys were in the bar.
So we go to the arraignment.
Our focus today turns to Laramie, Wyoming, and the Albany County Courthouse, where Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson are being charged for the brutal beating of Matthew Shepard, a gay University of Wyoming student.
The arraignment was on Friday, right around lunchtime, and I said, I'm just going. I just took off. It's just down the street. So I walked a few blocks and I went. Has anybody told you about the arraignment? There were probably about 100 people from town, and probably as many news media at this point. A lot more of the details had come out. The fact that the perpetrators were kids themselves, local kids that everyone who's from around here has some relationship to. And what everybody was really, I think, waiting on pins and needles for what would happen when the perpetrators walked in. And what happened? There's 200 people in the room at this point. They walk in their complete orange jumpsuits and their shackles, and you could hear a pin drop. It was incredibly solemn. I mean, lots of people were teary at this point. Then the judge came in and did a reading. There was a reading of the evidence that the prosecution has, and it's a statement of the facts. And the reading of the facts was...
The essential facts are that the defendants, Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson, met Matthew Shepard at the Fireside Bar, and after Mr. Shepard confided he was gay, the subjects deceived Mr. Shepard into leaving with them in their vehicle to a remote area. Upon arrival at said area, both subjects tied their victim to a buck fence, robbed him, tortured him, and beat him. Both defendants were later contacted by officers of the Laramie Police Department who observed inside the cab of their pickup a credit card and a pair of black patent leather shoes belonging to the victim, Matthew Shepard. The subjects took the victim's credit card, wallet containing $20 in cash, his shoes and other items, and obtained the victim's address in order to later burglarize his home.
I don't think there was any person who was left in that courtroom who wasn't crying at the end of it. I mean, it lasted 5 minutes, but it kept getting more and more horrific, ending with...
Said defendants left the victim begging for his life.
Laramie, Wyoming, often called the gem of the plains, is now the eye of the storm. The cowboy
Aaron
state has
McKinney
its
and his
rednecks
friend
and
Russell
yahoos for
Henderson
sure,
came
but there
from
are
the
no
poor
more
side
bigots
of
per
town.
capita in Wyoming.
As a gay
than there
college
are in
student
Brooklyn,
lay
Florida,
hospitalized in
California.
critical
Run
condition
differences
after a
in
severe
Wyoming.
beating.
There are
They lived
fewer
in
places
trailer
to
parks
stay
and
in.
sky
Built
shadow
himself
living,
as
working
Wyoming
at fast food
ambassador.
restaurants
Russell
and
fits
But it
fixing
was an
attitude
extreme version of
toward
what
gay
happens
men.
in our schools on a daily basis.
It's a tough business, as Matt Shepard knew, and as his friends all know, to be gay in cowboy country.
It was huge. Yeah, it was herds, and we're talking hundreds of reporters, which makes a huge dent in the town's population. There's reporters everywhere, news trucks everywhere on campus, everywhere in town, and we're not used to that type of attention to begin with. We're not used to that type of exposure.
Tiffany Edwards, local reporter.
These people are predators. Like, this one journalist actually caught one of the judges in the bathroom at the urinal and was like asking him questions. And the judge was like, "Excuse me, can I please have some privacy?" And the journalist was like offended that he asked for privacy. I mean, this is not how journalism started, like the Gutenberg press, you know?
I'll tell you what. When hard copy came and taped me, I taped them at the same exact time. I have every word I ever said on tape, so if they ever do anything funny, they better watch their fucking ass.
Wyoming Governor Jim Geringer, a first-term Republican up for re-election.
I am outraged and sickened by the heinous crime committed on Matthew Shepard. I extend my most heartfelt sympathies to the family.
Governor, you haven't pushed hate crime legislation in the past.
I would like to urge the people of Wyoming against overreacting in a way that gives one group special rights over others. We will wait and see if the vicious beating and torture of Matthew Shepard was motivated by hate.
You got the beginning of this news story where they had the graphics in the background and they got murder in Wyoming, and Wyoming's dripping with red like it's got blood on it. Something like, what is this? This is sensationalism, you know? And we're sitting here going, now wait a minute, we had these guys in jail in less than a day. I think that's pretty damn good.
And for us to be more or less maligned,
Eileen and Gil Engen.
that we're not a good community, and we are. The majority of people here are good people.
You get bad apples once in a while, and I think that the gay community took this as an advantage, and this is a good time for us to exploit this.
Bill McKinney, father of one of the accused.
Had this been a heterosexual, these two boys decided to take out and rob, this never would have made the national news. Now my son is guilty before he's even had a trial.
Look, I do think that the media actually made people accountable because they made people think. Because people were sitting in their homes, like watching TV and listening to CNN and watching Dan Rather and going, Jesus Christ, well, that's not how it is here. Well, how is it here?
Matthew Shepard, medical update at 3 p.m. Saturday, October 10th.
By this point, I looked out there, and where there had been 2 or 3 reporters, it must have been 10 or 15 still photographers, another 20 or 30 reporters, 10 video cameras. The parents had just arrived. I barely introduced myself to them, and then, you know, I looked out there and I thought, my God, what am I going to do? Matthew Shepard was admitted in critical condition approximately 9:15 p.m. October 7th. When he arrived, he was unresponsive, and breathing support was being provided. Matthew's major injuries upon arrival consisted of hypothermia and a fracture from behind his head to just in front of the right ear. This has caused bleeding in the brain as well as pressure on the brain. There were also several lacerations on his head, face, and neck. Matthew's temperature has fluctuated over the last 24 hours, ranging from 98 to 106 degrees. We have had difficulty controlling Matthew's temperature. Matthew's parents arrived at 7 p.m. October 9th and are now at his bedside. The following is a statement from them. First of all, we want to thank the American public for their kind thoughts about Matthew and their fond wishes for his speedy recovery. We appreciate your prayers and goodwill, and we know that they are something Matthew would appreciate too. Matthew is very much in need of his family at this time, and we ask that you respect our privacy as well as Matthew's so we can concentrate all of our efforts, thoughts, and love on our son. Thank you very much.
Both Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson pled not guilty to charges. Their girlfriends, Chastity Pausley and Kristen Price, also pled not guilty after being charged as accessories after the fact. On our next trip, we spoke with the chief investigating officer on the case, Detective Rob Debris of the Albany County Sheriff's Department.
You know, I guess the thing that bothered me most when I went down to Poudre Valley, where Matthew was, and the thing that bothered me the most was seeing him, you know, touching him. As a homicide detective, you know, you look at bodies, and this poor boy sitting there, fighting for his life, trying to make it, I wanted it so by the book, you know?
I keep seeing that picture in my head when I found him.
Aaron Kreifels.
And it's not pleasant whatsoever. I don't want it to be there. I want to, like, get it out. That's the biggest part for me, is that picture in my head. It's kind of unbelievable to me, you know, that I happen to be the person who found him, because the big question with me, like with my religion, is like, why did God want me to find him?
I know how to take care of myself, and I was irrationally terrified.
Catherine Connolly.
So what that meant is not letting my 12-year-old son walk the streets, seeing a truck do a U-turn and thinking it's coming after me, having to stop because I'm shaking so bad. And in fact, the pickup truck did not come after me, but my reaction was to have my heart in my mouth.
Ultimately, no matter how you dice it, I did have an opportunity.
Matt Galloway.
If I had amazing hindsight of 2020 to have stopped what occurred, I keep thinking, I should have noticed. These guys shouldn't be talking to this guy. I should have not had my head down those 20 seconds when I was washing dishes. Things I could have done. What the hell was I thinking?
So you do a lot of studying. You know, you spend hours and hours and hours. You study, you study, you study. You talk to witnesses and officers. You know, you make sure you understand everything, and then you always come back to... You know, I get this flash of seeing Matthew. I wanted it so tight that there was no way they were going to get out of this.
One of the things that happened when I got to the fence,
Reggie Flutie.
it was just such an overwhelming amount of blood. And we tried to wear protective gloves, but we had a really cheap sheriff at the time, and he bought us shit gloves. You know, you put them on, and they keep breaking. So finally, you just ran out of gloves, you know. So you figure, well, you know, you don't hesitate. You know, that's what your mind tells you all the time. Don't hesitate. So you just keep moving, and you try to help Matthew and find an airway. And, you know, that's what you do, you know?
The thing I wasn't telling you before, is that Reggie is my daughter.
Marge Murray.
And when she first told me she wanted to be a police officer, well, I thought there was not a better choice for her. She could handle anything, whatever came her way.
Probably a day and a half later, the hospital called me and told me that Matthew had HIV. And the doctor said, you've been exposed and you've had a bad exposure. Because you see, I'd been building a lean-to for my llamas, and my hands had a bunch of open cuts on them, so I was kind of screwed, you know, and you think, oh, shoot, you know?
Would you like to talk about losing sleep?
So I said to the doctor, okay, what do I do? And they said, get up here. So I got up there and we started the ATZ drug immediately.
Now, they told me there's a medication that if it's administered 36 hours after you've been exposed, it can maybe stop your getting the disease.
That is a mean, nasty medicine. Mean. I've lost 10 pounds and a lot of my hair. Yeah.
And quite frankly, I wanted to lash out at somebody, not at Matthew. Please understand that. Not one of us was mad at Matthew, but we maybe wanted to squeeze McKinney's head off. And I think about Henderson. And you know, two absolutely human beings cause so much grief for so many people. It has been terrible for my whole family, but mostly for her and her kids.
I think it brought home to my girls what their mom does for a living.
Well, Reggie, you know what I'm going to tell you now.
And my parents told me, you know, they both said the same thing.
You're quitting this damn job.
And it's just a parent thing, you know, and they're terribly proud of you because you do a good job, whether it's handling a drunk or handling a case like this. But you know, they don't want you getting hurt.
Like I said, there's a right way, there's a wrong way, and then there's Reggie's way.
So finally I said, for God's sakes, lighten up, Francis.
Oh, you are so stubborn.
They say I'm stubborn, and I don't believe it. But I just think, you know, okay, I've heard your opinion, and now here's mine. I'm 39 years old, you know, and what are they going to do, spank me?
Oh, Reggie, don't give me any ideas.
It looked pretty funny. You know, what can they say?
I just hope she doesn't go before me. I just couldn't handle that.
The first week alone, vigils from Matthew Shepard were held in Laramie, Denver, Fort Collins, and Colorado Springs. Soon after, in Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Nashville, Minneapolis, and Portland, Maine. Among others, in Los Angeles, 5,000 people gathered. And in New York City, a political rally ended in civil disobedience and hundreds of arrests. And the Poudre Valley Hospital website received close to 1 million visitors from across the country and around the world, all expressing hope for Matthew's recovery. Matthew Shepard, medical update at 9 a.m. Sunday, October 11th.
As of 9 a.m. today, Matthew Shepard remains in critical condition. The family continues to emphasize that the media respect their privacy. The family also wants to thank the American public for their kind thoughts and concern for Matthew.
We went to the candle vigil.
Zubaydah Ullah.
And it was so good to be with people who felt like shit. I kept feeling like I don't deserve to feel this bad, you know? And someone got up there and said, blah, 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 blah. And then he said, I'm saying it wrong, but basically he said, come on, guys, let's show the world that Laramie is not this kind of town. But it is that kind of town. If it wasn't this kind of town, why did it happen here? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that's a lie, because it happened here. So how could it not be a town where this kind of thing happens? Like, that's just like totally like looking at an Escher painting and getting all confused like. It's just totally circular logic. How can you even say that? And we have to mourn this. And we have to be sad that we live in a town, a state, a country where shit like this happens. I mean, these are people trying to distance themselves from this crime. And we need to own this crime. I feel everyone needs to own it. We are like this. We are like this. We are like this.
On a day that is traditionally given over to nothing more profound than collegiate exuberance and the fortunes of the University of Wyoming football team, this community on the High Plains had a different kind of homecoming Saturday, as many searched their souls in the wake of a vicious, apparent anti-gay hate crime.
University President Philip Dubois.
This was homecoming weekend. There were a lot of people in town, and there's a homecoming parade that was scheduled, and then the students organized to tag onto the back of it, you know, behind the banner supporting Matt, and everybody wearing the armbands that the students had created.
I live in the center of town,
Harry Woods.
and my apartment has windows on two opposite streets. One goes north and one goes south. And that is exactly the homecoming parade route. Now, on the day of the parade, I had a cast on my leg because of a fall. So I was very disappointed because I really wanted to walk with the people that were marching for Matthew. But I couldn't. So I watched from my window. And it was just, I'm 52 years old and I'm gay. I have lived here for many years and I have seen a lot. And I was very moved when I saw the tag on the end of the homecoming parade. About 100 people walking behind a banner for Matthew Shepard. So then the parade went down to the end of the block to make a U-turn, and I went to the other side of my apartment to wait for it to come down south, the other street.
I was right up in front where they were holding the banner for Matthew, and let me tell you, I've never had goosebumps so long in my life. It was incredible. A mass of people, families, mothers holding their 6-year-olds, tying these armbands around these 6-year-olds' kids, and trying to explain to them why they should wear an armband. Just amazing. I mean, it was absolutely one of the most beautiful things I've ever done in my life.
Well, about 10 minutes went by, and sure enough, the parade started coming down the street. And then I noticed the most incredible thing. As the parade came down the street, the number of people walking for Matthew Shepard had grown 5 times. There were at least 500 people marching for Matthew. 500 people. Can you imagine? The tag at the end was larger than the entire parade. And people kept joining in. And you know what? I started to cry. Tears were streaming down my face. And I thought, thank God that I got to see this in my lifetime. And my second thought was, thank you, Matthew.
Company member, Lee Fondowski.
This is one of the last days on our second trip to Laramie. Greg and I have been conducting interviews nonstop, and we're exhausted.
We are to meet with Father Roger at 7:30 in the morning. I was wishing we could skip it all together, but, we have to follow through to the end. So here we go, 7:30 a.m., 2 queers and a Catholic priest.
Matthew Shepard had served us well. You realize that? He has served us well. And I do not mean to condemn Matthew to perfection, but I cannot mention anyone who has done more for this community than Matthew. And I'm not going to sit here and say, I was just this bold guy. No fear. I was scared. I was very vocal in this community when this happened, and I thought, should we call the bishop and ask permission to do the vigil? And I was like, hell no, I'm not going to do that. His permission doesn't make it correct. You realize that. And I'm not knocking bishops, but what is correct is correct. You people are just out here on a search, though. I will do this. I will trust you people that if you write a play of this, that you say it correct. I think you have a responsibility to do that. Don't make matters worse. You think violence is what they did to Matthew. They did do violence to Matthew, but every time you're called a fag or you're called a les or whatever.
Or a dyke.
Dyke, yes, a dyke. Do you realize that is violence too? That is the seed of violence. And I would resent it immensely if you use anything I said to to somehow cultivate that kind of violence, even if it's in its smallest form. I would resent it immensely, and you need to know that.
Thank you, Father, for saying that.
Just deal with what is true. You know what is true, and you need to do your best to say it correct.
Andrew Gomez.
Yeah, I was in there. I was in jail with Aaron in December. I got thrown in over Christmas, assault and battery, 2 counts. I don't want to talk about it. Yeah, but we were sitting there, right, eating our Christmas dinner, trying to eat my stuffing, my motherfucking bread and shit, my little roll and whatnot. And I asked him, I was like, yo, like, homie, tell me something, right? Tell me something, please. Like, okay, I'm trying to think right now, like, how I worded this. I was like, yo, why'd you kill that faggot if you're destined to be a faggot anyway, right? And you know, I mean, think about it, right? Because he's either gonna get humped a lot or he's gonna die, right? So why would you do that? Think about it, I don't understand, right? So anyway, you know what he told me? Honest to God, this is what he says. This is what he says. He goes, yo, he tried to grab my dick. That's what he said. Yo, he's dumb, dog. He don't even act like it's nothing. He tried to grab my dick. Yo, now I heard they're auctioning his ass off up in Mac's ward. Yo, he's got people being like, yo, I'm gonna give you 5, 6, 7 cartons of cigarettes for his ass. Yo, them boys are not getting out of there.
Hello?
Reverend,
Yes, hello.
I believe your wife told you a bit about why I'm contacting you.
Yes, she did. And let me tell you, I don't know that I really want to talk to anyone about any of this incident. I am somewhat involved, and I just don't think
Yes,
that...
I completely understand, and I don't blame you. You know, I went to your service on Sunday.
You went to services on Sunday?
Yes, I did.
On Sunday?
Yes, this past Sunday.
Did I meet you?
Well, yes. You welcomed me at the beginning, I believe.
I see. Well, let me tell you, I am not afraid to be controversial or to speak my mind, and that is not the views of my congregation per se. Now, as I said, I am somewhat involved. That the people in the case, well, the girlfriend of the accused is a member of our congregation, and one of the accused has visited. Now, those 2 people, the accused, have forfeited their lives.
Well, thank you, Reverend. I appreciate your speaking with me.
At about 11:30 that night, I had just barely gone to bed, and Margot, our chief operating officer, called and said, well, his blood pressure has started to drop. Well, let's wait and see. And she called me about 10 after, and he had just died. So I quick got dressed and I came in, and I went into the ICU where the family was. And Judy came up and she put her arms around me, and I put my arms around her. And we just stood there, honestly, for like 10 minutes, because what else do you do? And then we had to sit and we had to talk about things that you just, Dennis, it's public knowledge now, and I'm going to go out there and tell the whole world that this happened, because at this point, it really was the whole world. And so Judy told me what she wanted to say, and I went out at 4:00 a.m.
Matthew Shepard, medical update for 4:30 a.m. Monday, October 12th.
At 12 midnight on October 12th, Matthew Shepard's blood pressure began to drop. We immediately notified his family, who were already at the hospital. At 12:53 a.m., Matthew Shepard died. His family was at his bedside. The family did release the following statement. The family asked again me to express their sincerest gratitude to the entire world for their overwhelming response for their son. The family was grateful that they did not have to make a decision regarding whether or not to continue life support for their son. Like a good son, he was caring to the end and removed guilt from this or stress from the family. He came into the world premature, and he left the world premature. Matthew's mother said, "Go home. Give your kids a hug, and don't ever let a day go by without telling them that you love them." And I don't know how I let it happen, you know? I lost it on national television. But, you know, we had been up for like 72 straight hours, and then I went home and I slept for a half hour. You know, it's just the way, I don't know. But in a moment of complete brain deadness, you know, while I was out there reading that statement, and I thought about my own 4 daughters, and you go home and hug your kids because she doesn't have a son anymore. And I'm thinking, I am so lame. You know, and we started to get people sending us emails and letters, and most of them were generally nice. But I did get this one. This guy wrote me, and he said, "Do you cry like a baby on TV for all your patients or only the faggots?" You know, and I told you before, homosexuality is not a lifestyle with which I agree. But, you know, having been thrown into this, I didn't understand the magnitude with which people hate. And all of the letters we got, there were maybe 2 or 3. You know, the rest were very generally kind. Most of them were, "Thank you for your caring and compassion." And Matthew Shepard had caring and compassion from the moment he got here.
I spoke with Doc today and told him we would be coming soon for the upcoming trials of Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney. And this is what he had to say.
I'll tell you what, they put those 2 boys to death.
That would defeat everything Matt would be thinking about on them. Because Matt would not want to leave those 2 to die. He'd want to leave them with hope. HOPE. Just like the whole world hoped that Matt would survive. The whole thing, you see, the whole thing ropes around hope. HOPE.